The night the cowboy took the horse, the wind screamed across the prairie like it was warning him to walk away, because the animal standing at the edge of the corral looked more like a ghost than a prize, ribs faintly visible under a dull coat, head low, eyes sharp with a fear that had learned not to trust mercy. Folks would later say that was the moment everything changed, but at the time, all anyone saw was a sick horse and a desperate deal, the kind made when money runs out and pride is already gone. The cowboy, whose name was Cole Mercer, stood there with his hat pulled low, watching the horse breathe, slow and uneven, while the man who owed him money talked too fast, swore too hard, and refused to meet his eyes. Cole had come for cash to keep his ranch alive for one more month, but instead he was being offered a debt payment that looked like trouble wrapped in skin and bone. The horse shifted, hooves scraping the dirt, muscles tense like a wire pulled too tight, and when she lifted her head, her gaze locked on Cole's with a warning that felt ancient and wild, as if she had survived things neither of them would ever speak aloud. People nearby shook their heads. Someone muttered that the horse wouldn't last the winter. Another laughed and said Cole was crazy if he accepted her. But Cole didn't laugh. He felt something tighten in his chest, not hope exactly, but recognition. He knew what it felt like to be written off. 2 years earlier, he'd lost his brother in a ranch accident, and the grief had hollowed him out, leaving bills unpaid and dreams postponed. Since then, Cole had been surviving, not living, keeping the ranch running out of stubbornness more than faith. And now here he was, staring at a horse everyone called sick, a horse no one wanted, offered up like a last, unwanted coin. The wind gusted again, rattling the corral gate, and the horse flinched, muscles coiling as if ready to bolt through solid steel if she had to. Cole asked one simple question, "What's wrong with her?" The man shrugged, said she stopped performing, said she got unpredictable, said the vet bills weren't worth it. He said blood work once came back strange but nothing clear enough to justify spending more money. That was all Cole needed to hear, because strange had a way of hiding truths people didn't want to face. He stepped closer, slow and careful, letting the horse see him. She pinned her ears, head snapping up, eyes wide, breath quickening. This wasn't just fear, it was memory. Someone had taught her that hands meant pain or abandonment. Cole stopped, kept his voice low, steady, and spoke like he used to speak to young colts before life taught him caution. "Easy," he said, though he knew nothing about this was easy. When he reached out, not to touch but to let her smell him, she recoiled, pressing herself into the corner of the corral, muscles trembling. The observers fell silent, sensing something raw unfolding. This wasn't a transaction anymore, it was a standoff between survival instincts and a fragile chance at trust. Cole noticed the scars then, faint lines hidden beneath hair, signs of hard handling and harder expectations. He noticed her legs, strong despite her thinness, and the way she shifted her weight to protect herself, not injured, just wary. The more he looked, the more he felt that pull in his chest grow stronger. This horse wasn't broken. She was guarded. Against every practical instinct, Cole agreed to the deal. The debt would be cleared, and the horse would come with him. Someone laughed outright, calling it the worst business decision Cole had ever made. He tipped his hat, signed the papers, and led the horse toward his trailer. She resisted at first, planting her feet, snorting, testing the limits of the rope. Cole didn't yank. He waited. Minutes passed. The observers shifted uncomfortably. Finally, inch by inch, she moved, stepping into the trailer with a tension so thick it felt like the air might snap. When the doors closed, Cole rested his forehead briefly against the cool metal, breathing out a shaky laugh that was half relief, half dread. The drive back to the ranch was long and quiet, broken only by the sound of hooves shifting behind him. Cole's mind raced with questions he didn't have answers to. How sick was she, really? Could he even afford another vet visit? Was this compassion or self-destruction? But beneath the worry was something else, a flicker of purpose he hadn't felt in a long time. When he pulled into his property, the sky was bruised purple with dusk, and the land stretched out empty and honest. This place had seen him at his worst, and now it was about to witness another gamble. He unloaded the horse into a small quarantine paddock, giving her space, watching from a distance as she circled, nostrils flaring, taking in new smells and unfamiliar sounds. She didn't roll or relax. She stayed alert, eyes tracking every movement. Cole noticed how she positioned herself with the fence at her back, a prey animal's instinct carved deep by experience. He left fresh hay and clean water, resisting the urge to push for more. Trust, he knew, was earned in quiet moments, not forced gestures. That night, Cole sat on the porch, staring out at the paddock, the silhouette of the horse barely visible under the stars. He thought about his brother, about promises made and broken, about how close he'd come to losing everything. Somewhere in the dark, the horse let out a low, uncertain nicker, not a call, just a sound, and Cole felt it like a question hanging in the air. "What are you going to do now?" He didn't have an answer yet, but he knew one thing: walking away was no longer an option. If you've ever taken a risk everyone else warned you against, you already know this feeling, the mix of fear and hope that makes your heart pound a little faster. And as this story unfolds, you'll want to stay with us, because what that sick horse was carrying inside her veins would soon turn disbelief into awe, and a desperate deal into a revelation no one saw coming. So if you're feeling that pull already, that curiosity you can't shake, take a breath, settle in, and remember to like and subscribe, not because of algorithms, but because stories like this deserve to be shared. Because this was only the beginning, and the real test was still waiting in her blood. Morning came slow and pale, sunlight stretching across the ranch like it was afraid to disturb whatever had followed Cole home the night before, and when he stepped outside with a mug of coffee gone cold in his hands, the first thing he did was look toward the quarantine paddock. The horse was already awake, standing perfectly still, head high, ears rotating like radar dishes, watching him as if measuring his intentions. She hadn't touched much of the hay. That alone worried him. Sick horses usually ate or didn't move at all. This one was alert, coiled, alive in a way that didn't match the story he'd been sold. Cole felt that same uneasy pull in his chest again, the sense that something here didn't add up. He approached slowly, boots crunching softly on gravel, stopping well short of the fence. "Morning," he said, voice low, steady, the way he talked to himself when the nights got heavy. The horse didn't respond, but she didn't bolt either. She shifted her weight, muscles rippling under her coat, and Cole noticed it again: power. Even thin, even stressed, she moved like an athlete holding back. He leaned on the fence and watched, letting the silence do the work. Somewhere inside him, a small hope sparked, dangerous and fragile. Maybe this horse wasn't broken. Maybe she was just misunderstood. By mid-morning, Cole's friend and occasional ranch hand, Mara, pulled up in her dusty pickup. Mara had been around horses her whole life, the kind of observer who noticed details others missed. She climbed out, took one look at the paddock, and whistled low. "That the sick horse everyone's talking about?" she asked. Cole nodded. Mara watched the mare circle the fence line, her movements controlled but tense. "She doesn't move like she's dying," Mara said quietly. "She moves like she's waiting." Those words stuck. Waiting for what? Cole wondered. Another disappointment? Another rough hand? Another reason to run? As if sensing the attention, the mare tossed her head, Mene catching the light, and for a split second, Cole saw something that made his breath hitch, a flash of elegance, of balance, of raw, unrefined grace. Mara saw it too. "You ever see a sick horse hold herself like that?" she asked. Cole shook his head slowly. They decided to do the bare minimum that day. No pressure, no ropes, no expectations. Just observation. Cole spent hours nearby, fixing fence posts, mending a gate, letting the mare get used to his presence without demands. At first, she kept her distance, eyes tracking every move. But as the sun climbed and dipped, something shifted. She began to graze, small bites at first, then more confidently. When Cole sat down on an overturned bucket, she stopped pacing. The tension in her body eased by a fraction, enough to be noticeable if you were paying attention. But the conflict wasn't just with the horse. It was inside Cole too. Every bill on his kitchen table whispered that he couldn't afford false hope. Vet visits meant money he didn't have. Emotional attachment meant risk. And yet, when he looked at the mare, he felt that stubborn urge rise up, the same one that had kept the ranch alive when logic said to quit. That night, he made a decision that scared him almost as much as it steadied him. He'd call a vet. Not for treatment yet. Just tests. Answers. The vet, an older man named Dr. Harlan, arrived 2 days later. He moved calmly, professionally, taking in the mare with a critical eye. "She's thin," he said. "Stressed. But I've seen worse." The mare reacted sharply to his presence, stepping back, whites of her eyes flashing. Cole stepped between them, not touching her, just existing there, a quiet barrier. "Easy," he murmured. The mare hesitated, then stilled, her breathing slowing just enough for Dr. Harlan to proceed. Drawing blood was a challenge. The mare flinched at the needle, muscles bunching, but she didn't explode. She trembled, sweat breaking out along her neck, eyes locked on Cole. He spoke to her the entire time, nonsense words, reassurances he wasn't sure she understood. When it was done, she pulled away, snorting, but instead of fleeing, she stayed close enough to watch him. That alone felt like a victory. Dr. Harlan labeled the vials carefully. "I'll run the basics," he said. "But I'll be honest, Cole. There's something unusual here." Cole's stomach dropped. "Unusual how?" he asked. The vet shrugged. "Her vitals don't match her condition. And her muscle tone, it's inconsistent with long-term illness." He paused, looking back at the mare. Sometimes horses get mislabeled because they don't fit expectations. The waiting was the hardest part. Days stretched long, each one filled with small moments that pulled Cole deeper in. The mare began eating more regularly. She allowed him to step closer without retreating. Once, when a sudden noise sent her skittering, she stopped herself halfway, turning back to look at him, as if checking whether he was still there. That look hit Cole harder than any buck or bite ever could. Trust, tentative and fragile, was forming in the space between them. Mara noticed it too. "She's choosing you," she said one evening as they leaned against the fence. "Whatever she's been through, she's deciding you're different." Cole swallowed, nodding. He didn't trust himself to speak. Choosing went both ways, and he knew that once the test results came back, everything could change, for better or worse. When Dr. Harlan finally called, it was late afternoon. Cole stood in the kitchen, phone pressed to his ear, eyes on the paddock through the window. "The blood work is strange," the vet said slowly. Cole's heart pounded. "Strange bad or strange good?" There was a pause. "Neither," Dr. Harlan replied. "Strange valuable." Cole didn't understand yet, not fully. But he felt the ground shift beneath his feet, the story bending toward something bigger than debt and desperation. Outside, the mare lifted her head, ears forward, as if she sensed the change too. And right then, in that suspended moment, Cole realized this wasn't just about saving a horse anymore. It was about uncovering a truth that someone, somewhere, had tried very hard to ignore. And if you think this is where the answers come easy, stay with us, because the next revelation wouldn't just change Cole's life, it would force him to choose between the safety of letting go and the courage to step into a future he never imagined. If this story is pulling you in, take a second to share it, because what's coming next proves that sometimes the greatest value is hidden where no one thinks to look. The vet's words hung in the air long after the call ended, strange and valuable echoing through Cole's mind as he stood frozen in the kitchen, the ticking clock suddenly too loud, the world narrowing to the paddock outside where the mare moved slowly along the fence as if tracing the edges of her new life. Valuable didn't make sense. Sick horses weren't valuable. Problem horses weren't valuable. And yet, deep down, Cole had known something was off from the moment he saw the way she held herself, like royalty disguised as ruin. He stepped onto the porch, letting the screen door creak softly behind him, and the mare lifted her head at the sound, eyes locking on him with a focus that made his chest tighten. Dr. Harlan came back the next morning, his truck raising a cloud of dust that seemed to signal trouble and promise in equal measure. He didn't waste time with small talk. He laid papers out on the hood of his truck, charts and numbers that meant nothing to anyone else, but his expression said everything. "Her blood markers," he began, tapping a page with his finger, "they're not consistent with illness. They're consistent with extreme athletic potential." Cole frowned. "That doesn't make sense," he said. "She was called sick." The vet nodded. "Stress can mimic sickness. Overtraining, poor handling, and sudden changes can make a high-performance horse look like she's failing." Mara stood nearby, arms crossed, eyes sharp. "So what are you saying?" she asked. Dr. Harlan took a breath. I'm saying this mare has genetic indicators you don't see every day. Fast twitch muscle fibers. Cardiovascular efficiency. Blood oxygen capacity that rivals horses bred for elite competition. Cole's heart began to race. You're saying she's a racehorse? The vet shook his head. Not just a racehorse. Her markers suggest lineage tied to top-tier performance stock. If I had to guess, she's either the result of a breeding program that went very right or very wrong. The idea hit Cole like a wave. Someone, somewhere, had invested serious money into this horse. And then, for reasons still unclear, she'd been discarded, labeled sick, passed along like a problem no one wanted to deal with. What does that mean? Cole asked quietly. Dr. Harlan met his gaze. It means, on paper alone, she could be worth 6 figures. Possibly more. The number landed heavy in the dust between them. $150,000. The kind of money that could erase Cole's debts, rebuild his ranch, secure his future. The kind of money that turned people into hunters. As if sensing the shift in energy, the mare grew restless, pacing, tossing her head. Cole moved toward her, instinctively lowering the tension, speaking softly. She slowed when he approached, eyes flicking to his face, then back to the vet. Trust had grown, but it was still fragile, easily shaken by raised voices and sudden movements. Easy, Cole whispered, resting a hand on the fence. He didn't touch her. He didn't need to. The bond was forming in the space of restraint. Over the next few days, more tests confirmed what Dr. Harlan suspected. Genetic screening revealed lineage tied to an elite bloodline thought to have been lost years ago after a controversial breeding operation shut down. Records were incomplete, names missing, but the markers were unmistakable. The mare wasn't just talented. She was rare. And rarity attracted attention. Word began to spread, quietly at first. A call from a man claiming to represent an interested party. An email offering to buy the mare sight unseen. Cole declined them all, unease crawling up his spine. This wasn't a lottery ticket. This was a living being who had already been treated like an asset once, and discarded when she became inconvenient. The mare's behavior mirrored the tension. She became more reactive, flinching at unfamiliar sounds, pacing at night. Cole spent hours with her, sitting in the paddock, reading aloud from an old book his brother used to love, the sound of his voice a steady anchor. Slowly, she began to approach him, nostrils flaring as she investigated, her breath warm against his sleeve. The first time she touched him, just a soft brush of her muzzle against his hand, Cole felt his eyes burn. It was a small thing, but it carried the weight of everything she'd survived. Mara watched it all unfold, her expression torn between awe and concern. You know what this means, right? She said one evening as the sun bled orange across the horizon. People will come. Not all of them honest. Cole nodded. I know. He looked at the mare, now grazing calmly nearby. But I won't sell her to the first person waving money. The words surprised him with their certainty. This wasn't just about value. It was about redemption, hers and his. The twist came when Dr. Harlan uncovered something buried in the old records. The mare had been pulled from training after a single incident where she refused to run. Not because she couldn't, but because she wouldn't. She'd balked at the gate, panicked, nearly injuring herself and a rider. Instead of patience or retraining, she'd been labeled unstable. High-drive horses, the vet explained, need understanding. Without it, they break, not physically, but mentally. Cole clenched his jaw, anger simmering. She hadn't been sick. She'd been overwhelmed. That night, a storm rolled in fast, thunder cracking close enough to rattle windows. The mare panicked, slamming against the fence, fear taking over. Cole ran to her, heart pounding, standing in the rain, talking to her, holding space while she trembled. Minutes stretched long, soaked and shaking, until finally, she stopped. She stood beside him, sides heaving, head low. In that moment, soaked to the bone, Cole realized the true weight of the choice before him. He could sell her, solve every problem he had, and walk away. Or he could protect her, help her heal, and risk everything. If you're feeling that tension right now, that pull between what's easy and what's right, you're not alone. This is where the story tightens, where the stakes rise higher than money ever could. And if this journey is hitting you in the chest the way it hit Cole, take a second to like and share. It helps stories like this reach people who need the reminder that value isn't always measured in dollars. Because in the next chapter, Cole's resolve would be tested in ways he never saw coming, and the mayor's worth would be challenged not by blood tests, but by the world itself. The days that followed the storm were quiet but charged, as if the air itself held its breath. The mare, no longer just the sick horse, moved through the paddock with a mixture of caution and curiosity. Each time Cole approached, she measured him, muscles taut, eyes sharp, yet something had shifted. That brush of trust, fragile as it was, had been reinforced in the chaos of the storm. Cole could feel it in the way she slowed when he spoke, the way her ears twitched toward him, the tiny exhalation that passed when he stood nearby without forcing contact. She was learning that he wouldn't hurt her, and he was learning that patience, more than anything, could earn loyalty. Mara helped him build a small training corral, just a few ropes and barrels, a space for the mare to explore controlled movement without feeling trapped. "She's testing boundaries," Mara noted one afternoon, leaning on the fence. "Not because she's bad. Because she's figuring out who you are." Cole nodded, understanding the subtle warning. She was cautious, but she was watching, learning, remembering. And he was watching her, noticing every micro-expression, the twitch of a nostril, the flick of a tail, the shift of her weight, reading her language like he'd read his brother's notes on horse behavior years ago. The first real breakthrough came when Cole approached the mare with a brush. It was a simple act, but to her, it might as well have been an invitation to a world she'd been denied. She flinched the first time, pulling her head away sharply. Cole froze. Mara held her breath. "Easy," he whispered, letting his hand hover. Slowly, tentatively, she allowed him to make contact. The brush glided over her neck, and her muscles, tense for weeks, began to relax. She closed her eyes for a moment, and for the first time, Cole felt that the bond between them wasn't tentative anymore, it was mutual. But just as trust began to settle, conflict returned. News of her value had leaked, quiet at first, whispers among horse traders and performance enthusiasts. One morning, Cole found a stranger on the edge of the property, a man in a pressed shirt and polished boots, asking questions about the mare, about her blood work, about whether he'd consider selling her. Cole's chest tightened. "She's not for sale," he said firmly. The man smiled, a calculating smile. "Someone with that potential? You could make a fortune." Cole's jaw clenched. "I don't need a fortune. I need her to be safe." The tension escalated over the next few days. More inquiries came, emails, calls, even a vague offer left at the ranch gate. Cole realized that the mare's value had made her a target, and for the first time, he truly understood what people had done to her before. They had treated her as currency, as an object to be used, then discarded. Now, her blood revealed her worth in numbers, and suddenly the world wanted her. But Cole couldn't see her that way. Not now, not ever. She had survived neglect and mislabeling, and she deserved more than a transaction. Then came the training challenge. Cole wanted to see what she could really do, but carefully. He led her into the small corral, keeping his body relaxed, his voice low. The mare was hesitant, eyes darting, muscles coiled. Step by step, Cole encouraged her, guiding her around barrels, rewarding her pauses, letting her figure out the path. Each successful turn was a triumph. Mara watched, amazed at the progress. "Look at her," she said. "She's transforming under your patience." The mare's transformation wasn't just physical. Her spirit, previously hidden behind layers of fear and survival instincts, began to shine. She began to experiment, taking small leaps, stretching her legs, trusting her body again. Cole felt his own spirit lift with her. Each movement, each nicker of recognition, each glance that said, "I'm here, and I see you," built something neither of them could quantify. Then came the ultimate test, a small jump. Cole had kept it simple, a low, wooden rail, more symbolic than challenging. He positioned her carefully, using soft commands, gentle encouragement. The mare froze, muscles tense, heart racing. Cole's hand hovered over her neck. "You can do this," he whispered. She sniffed the air, then, with a flick of her ears and a surge of energy, cleared the jump. For a heartbeat, silence. Then a soft, almost triumphant whinny escaped her lips, and Cole laughed, drenched in rain and mud, heart pounding. Mara cheered, tears in her eyes. This was more than training. This was reclamation, the reclamation of her life and trust. But the outside world wasn't done testing them. Later that week, a serious offer arrived, an official proposal to purchase her for 6 figures. Cole read the email, heart racing. The temptation was immense. He could fix his debts, rebuild the ranch, secure everything he'd been struggling for years to achieve. But he looked at her, grazing calmly nearby, eyes bright, tail flicking contentedly, and the choice became clear. She wasn't a commodity. She was family. He deleted the email, called Mara over, and whispered, "She stays. No matter what." It was a turning point. From that moment, every action reinforced the bond. Grooming sessions, gentle groundwork, long walks along the pasture. Slowly, the mare began to follow Cole without hesitation, nuzzling his shoulder, trusting his judgment, choosing him as companion, teacher, and protector. Cole, in turn, allowed himself to hope again, to feel that maybe the worst losses weren't permanent, that the past didn't have to dictate the future. By the end of the 4th week, the transformation was undeniable. The mare's coat glistened, muscles firmed, eyes bright and alert, but it wasn't just the physical change, it was the spirit shining through. Cole and Mara watched her run freely across the pasture one evening, the sun golden behind her, movement fluid and joyful. Cole felt a lump in his throat. This horse, the one everyone had written off, had reclaimed her life, and in doing so, reminded him of what it meant to fight for something that truly mattered. And if you've been following this journey, feeling that tension, hope, and awe, take a moment to like and share. Stories like this deserve to be seen, because they remind us all that trust can be rebuilt, courage can be reclaimed, and even the most discarded beings can rise to greatness when given patience, care, and love. In the next part, the revelation that turns disbelief into wonder will finally arrive, and the full magnitude of her true value will shock everyone who ever doubted her. Weeks passed, and the ranch settled into a rhythm, the mare now a part of the landscape rather than an intruder. Every morning, Cole would step into the paddock and find her waiting, ears forward, eyes bright, muscles relaxed but ready. She had learned the language of trust, and Cole had learned the patience to hear it. But even as peace settled, the undercurrent of her true value remained, her blood work, her lineage, the rare combination of genetics that made her one of the most sought-after horses alive. Then came the final, life-changing confirmation. Dr. Harlan called Cole one crisp morning, excitement in his usually measured voice. "You need to see this," he said. Cole and Mara drove together, curiosity and nerves prickling in equal measure. In Dr. Harlan's office, the vet laid out the final results: pedigree records, cross-reference genetic markers, rare bloodlines. "She's worth every bit of what we suspected, and then some," he said. Cole leaned forward, reading the documents carefully. The horse he had accepted as a debt payment, the one everyone else had written off as sick and useless, was worth $150,000 or more on the market. For a moment, Cole felt the old tug of temptation, the idea of selling her and solving years of financial struggle in a single transaction. But he looked at Mara, then at the paddock beyond the window where the mare grazed in golden sunlight, and it didn't feel right. Money couldn't replace the bond they had built. It couldn't replicate the quiet mornings of trust, the hours spent repairing fear, the little victories over hesitation and trauma. This horse wasn't just valuable in dollars, she was invaluable in spirit. The true reward came that afternoon. Cole walked into the paddock, hands empty, voice calm. The mare lifted her head, ears pricked, nostrils flaring softly. He approached slowly, letting her measure him, giving her space, letting trust guide the interaction. When she walked toward him and nuzzled his shoulder, the bond they had cultivated crystallized in that simple, tender gesture. He wrapped an arm around her neck, feeling her steady breathing, hearing her soft nicker. The tears he hadn't allowed himself since his brother's death spilled freely. Mara, standing nearby, watched with a smile. "She chose you," she said softly. "And you chose her." Cole nodded, words failing him. They didn't need to be said. The mare had survived abandonment, mislabeling, and fear. Cole had survived grief, debt, and despair. Together, they had rebuilt what had been broken. News of the mare's discovery spread slowly at first, then like wildfire. Journalists, breeders, and enthusiasts arrived with questions and offers. Cole listened politely but refused every bid. The mare wasn't a commodity. She was a companion, a living testament to the power of patience and love. Even those who had doubted him, the neighbors, the ranchers, the ones who laughed at his crazy decision, had to admit the truth. The horse was extraordinary, but her greatest value was the heart she had healed along the way. One evening, Cole and the mare stood on a hill overlooking the ranch, the sunset painting the sky in brilliant oranges and purples. He ran a hand along her neck, feeling muscles that were strong yet gentle beneath his fingers. She nuzzled him in return, and for the first time in years, he allowed himself to imagine a future unburdened by loss and worry. "We made it," he whispered. The mare blinked slowly, as if understanding, as if acknowledging that the journey they had taken together was more important than any number on a piece of paper. Mara leaned on the fence, smiling. "You know," she said, "people will still try to put a price on her." Cole laughed softly, shaking his head. "Let them try. They'll never understand. Some things aren't meant to be bought or sold." That night, as the mare slept quietly in her stall, Cole sat on the porch, reflecting on the months that had passed. From a desperate deal for debt repayment to the revelation of priceless lineage, the journey had been more than he expected. But it wasn't just about the money. It was about trust, healing, and the bond between humans and horses. It was about seeing worth where others only saw weakness, and having the courage to nurture it rather than exploit it. For anyone watching this story, there's a lesson hidden in the wind across the prairie, in the quiet moments of patience, in the courage to see the unseen. Value is often measured in dollars, but true worth is measured in loyalty, resilience, and love. And sometimes, the things we rescue end up rescuing us right back. As the stars emerged over the ranch that night, the mare's silhouette framed against the moonlight, Cole felt a deep, unshakable gratitude. He had gained far more than he had ever imagined, not just a horse, but a companion, a teacher, and a reminder that hope can bloom in the most unlikely places. And the story that began with a desperate debt had ended in wonder, awe, and a heart full of unspoken promise. If this story touched you, inspired you, or made your heart swell with the connection between humans and animals, take a moment to like, share, and subscribe. Stories like these remind us that sometimes the greatest treasures are the lives we touch, the trust we earn, and the bonds we refuse to break. Because at the end of the day, a horse isn't just an animal, a debt, or a number, it's a story, and some stories are priceless. And as Cole and the mare stood together under the quiet night sky, it was clear, the world might have labeled her as sick, but in truth, she was extraordinary, always had been, and the best part was, now everyone who met her could see it too.